Hey guys, this is Udit Gupta. I'm the co-founder and a health coach at The Health Origin. Today we are going to talk about the COVID-19 or the coronavirus, how it spreads, some of the myths around it, its symptoms, what can one do diet-wise, and some of the precautions one needs to take. So the coronavirus is of course a virus, which means that it's a non-living entity till it finds a host body, a living body, attaches itself to it, infects the body, starts multiplying, and also transmits to other people. Some of the symptoms of the coronavirus are cough, fever, and shortness of breath. However, in extreme situations and in severe cases, it is also seen that people have tightness in their chest and bluish lips. So these are some of the symptoms of the coronavirus. Let's talk about the incubation and the transmission of the coronavirus. Incubation period means the time from one has caught the virus to the time when the one starts showing the symptoms. And that's where many nations have gotten it wrong. The incubation time for the coronavirus is anywhere from 1 day to 14 days with an average of 5 days. Now what this means is if somebody has caught on the virus today, for the next 5, 10, 13, 14 days, they may not show the symptoms. So whoever they are meeting would also be exposed to the virus. And that's what makes it a little bit dangerous and unpredictable. In terms of the transmission, a person who's infected from the virus can transmit it to others through close contact or through respiratory droplets. Now this would mean cough, spit, or sneezing. One of the most important questions during these times is what can one do diet-wise? And I say most important because till the time a comprehensive cure or a vaccine is established, one can look into their plate, look into their diet, and boost their immunity. Some of the nutrients that are required to boost the immunity are vitamin D3, vitamin C, zinc, and some herbal remedies. And we are going to talk a little bit on those. The main nutrient I want to focus on is a vitamin D3 because of two reasons. A, vitamin D3 is the main important vitamin for everybody's immunity. And second, most people are actually deficient in vitamin D3. In fact, this is the main vitamin that most people are deficient in. Some of the foods that one can take to boost their vitamin D3 levels are mushrooms, yogurt, butter, milk, eggs, and flax seeds. But vitamin D unfortunately is not found in too many foods. One can also step in sunlight, but in order to get the right levels of D3, one would need to step out in sunlight for 90 to 120 minutes, which is very difficult for most people. The two reasons why most people are deficient in vitamin D3 though is because of lack of sunlight, but also because their diets are low in fats. And because vitamin D3 is a fat-based vitamin, it's a fat-soluble vitamin. If your diet does not have the essential fatty acids, the vitamin D3 levels do not come up. That's why what I recommend is taking a vitamin D3 supplement from over the counter. Now, you can only do the vitamin D3 supplement based on your blood reports, and that's why it's important to know what your D3 levels are. What I would say that in the blood reports, most of the labs would say that the D3 level should be between 30 to 100, and most of the people are looking at 30. But in times like these, I can tell you the right number that we are looking for is between a 50 to 70. So based on your levels, you can decide to take a D3 supplement. If you do not know your levels, what you can do is get a 60,000 international units or 60,000 IU of vitamin D3 and take it once in 10 days. For a period of 1 month, the D3 needs to be taken with meals. You cannot do too much D3 because there is such a thing called over toxicity of D3, and that's why the D3 needs to be taken in moderation. But at the same time, this is the most important nutrient to focus on. The second most important vitamin for immunity in the body is a vitamin C. Vitamin C improves the protein absorption in the body that overall builds your immunity. You get the most vitamin C from some of these foods. Number 1 would be sauerkraut, which is a cabbage-based fermented pickle. Number 2 would be an amla. Number 3 would be lemon, while number 4 would be all leafy green vegetables. Between these 4 foods, you would get the right levels of vitamin C for your body. The good thing about vitamin C is there is no toxicity of vitamin D because it's a water-soluble vitamin, which means if you end up eating more of it, you can very easily filter out the excess from your urine and there's no buildup of toxic vitamin C levels. So what I recommend again is more sauerkraut, which is the cabbage pickle, the fermented pickle, amla, lemons, and The two more nutrients I want to talk about are copper and zinc. Now these two go together because they are something called trace minerals. What are trace minerals? Trace minerals are elements or minerals that the body needs in very small amounts or traces, and these are required to do certain physiological roles in the body. While zinc is the main nutrient, main trace mineral for boosting immunity, and people who end up getting more coughs and colds are almost always deficient in zinc. Copper tends to be another trace minerals which is actually a part of vitamin C complex. So let's talk about these. For zinc, you get the best zinc from some of these foods like pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, hemp seeds and hemp powder, and some of the non-vegetarian foods. While for copper, you get it as a part of everything that has the natural vitamin C. So again, the best foods for copper would be sauerkraut, it would be the lemons, the amla, the leafy greens. At this point, it's very important for me to tell you that when you buy a synthetic vitamin C supplement that has the active form of vitamin C called ascorbic acid, but that almost always does not have a copper element to it. Which is why when we get queries of should we buy these synthetic vitamin C supplements, unfortunately the answer is almost always no. While the best foods, the natural foods that have the vitamin C, also come loaded with copper. It's also worth mentioning that there is something called too much copper. So if you are doing the foods that are rich in vitamin C, you do not need to do too much copper, especially by drinking water from the copper mugs or jugs. And that's why one needs to have just the right levels of copper, not too little, but also not too much. The next nutrient I'm going to talk about is magnesium. Magnesium happens to be a mineral which reduces the stress in the body, and in that way it increases the harmony of the system. In times of stress and lack of harmony is when the immunity of a person goes low, and that's why magnesium remains one of the most important minerals to protect your immunity, to protect the stress levels in the system, to make sure your threshold to stress is improved, and then you are not as susceptible to a viral attack or a disease. You need about 400 milligrams of magnesium. The best sources for magnesium would be chia seeds, basil seeds, sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds. It would also be the cacao nibs or the cacao powder, which is the raw form of chocolate. It would also be anything that's a leafy green. So you have spinach, you have kale, you have collard greens, Swiss chard, all the salad leaves. You also get magnesium from foods such as avocado and coconut. So doing more of these foods would make sure that your magnesium levels come up and your immunity is strengthened. It's worth mentioning that a vitamin D3 is very important to improve the absorption of magnesium. And as I said, while most people are lacking vitamin D3, it also means that most people are lacking magnesium, which is why the immunity in the modern day is going down and down. So again, magnesium and D3 go hand in hand. You boost your D3, you boost your magnesium by these foods, and you see your immunity improving. I also want to talk a little bit about herbs that boost the immunity in their own ways. The first herb I want to talk about is something called the ashwagandha root or the ashwagandha root powder, which basically is an adaptogen. It adapts the body so that the immunity can be improved. It improves the strength and the resistance of your system against any sort of attack. You get the ashwagandha in a powder form and also in a capsule form. If you're doing the ashwagandha powder, you would need about a quarter teaspoon to a half teaspoons twice a day at around somewhere around the morning and somewhere around the evening, as opposed to the capsules, which if you're doing, you would need one capsule in the morning, one in the evening. The second herb I want to talk about is the holy basil or tulsi as it's called. You get it in various forms, brown tulsi, sham tulsi, one tulsi. They all are very important here. You can make a blend of those. It's very commonly available, and just do a tulsi infusion at some point in the day. You can also do this multiple times. You would need about a teaspoon of these leaves 2 to 3 times a day. You also get something called tulsi oil or the tulsi arg or the holy basil oil or sweet basil oil, depending upon which oil you are buying, which you can use in a steam inhalation in the morning and in the evening for 5 to 10 minutes. You can use something called a mulethi powder, which is the powder of the mulethi root or the licorice root. And what that does, it also improves your immunity with an added advantage of cleansing your lungs. So if you are prone to or susceptible to cough and cold and you have that congestion, a mulethi is very effective in decongesting and it acts as an expectorant. You can also use something called hemp seeds or hemp powder, which would boost the levels of protein in your body, and that's how you improve your immunity. When it comes to protein, it happens to be one of the main food groups that most Indians are deficient in. You'll be surprised how non-vegetarians are also deficient in protein, and that's why my best suggestion for a protein powder that's also safe and natural is a hemp powder. It's also important to know that while intake is one thing, the absorption is a very different thing. There are a lot of times we think that because we are doing the healthy foods, nothing would happen to us. But if at the same time you have something called depleting factors coming in the diet, it's also going to mean that you may end up not absorbing or not making as much value of these nutrients as you should have. Some of the common depleting factors for all of these vitamins, minerals, and nutrients would be sugar, it would be alcohol, it would be smoking, it would be lack of sleep, it would be having irritable bowel syndrome or having a leaky gut. It would also be having some of the medications such as a statin, having too much inflammation, or having a painkiller which goes through the liver. If you have some of these factors applicable to you, it means that the intake of some of the healthy foods might be there, but you may not be absorbing it, in which case the intake needs to be higher, or some of these stressing factors, some of these depleting factors need to come down. This also means that biologically, if you are the type who would take a lot of stress about something, including the COVID-19, you would need more of the said nutrients, because in taking this stress, you're making sure that you're depleting most of these nutrients. And that's where it gets most interesting, because it may give you a false perception of eating these foods, but then the other thing is absorption, which is what you need to focus on. It's also important to talk about the best measure that we can take to stop the spread. As we discussed that the incubation period for the COVID-19 is up to 2 weeks, which means if you're carrying the virus today, the symptoms may not show up to 2 weeks later. So the best thing you can do is to do something called social distancing, where you're cutting down the spread of the disease. And if somebody has the disease, then to get it checked out, get cured for the symptoms, and then do something called social isolation. So again, you're cutting down the spread. It's very important to use this time to boost your immunity. So while you are either self-isolating or socially distancing yourself, use this time to eat the right nutrients, to not do the things which would deplete the right nutrients, to sleep well, to go for walks, but also maintain the distancing and to try to relax and lower your stress levels, because it is the combination of ingestion, assimilation, the right absorption, and not depleting the nutrients which would boost the person's immunity. So what we like to do at the Health Origin is factor a lot of that to get to the results that people like to achieve. And this is the same approach I would advise you all to follow. Work on the intake, work on the absorption, don't deplete too much. Stay strong, stay safe.